What's going on, guys? I wanted to pop in real quick and introduce myself. So my name is Chris, and I am the founder, owner, sole writer of the Locker Room Lounge so far. And so the Locker Room Lounge is a blog that I started earlier this year, and it's a sports blog primarily focused on the NBA, NFL, as both have been huge parts of my life up until now, and I wanted a place where I could both share with other people, talk with other people, and just express my own takes and opinions on the sports and what's going on in the both respective leagues at the moment. And I just want to kind of express my ideas about that. And so this is the first multimedia segment that I'm creating, and hopefully there are more to come. I also have written editorials planned out in the future. And like I said, this is the first one, so it's a little bit of a learning experience for me. So bear with me. Hopefully the quality of these videos improve as I get more familiar with both my editing software and just like the technical side of things. But yeah, enjoy. I want to start with a couple of the moves made in free agency. And overall, this free agency, I think the free agency class itself wasn't too, I'd say, star-studded. It's not like the past couple of years where we've had a lot of big names swapping around. This year it was kind of headlined, I'd say, more by Paul George and Klay Thompson. Two more, I'd say, on the downward trend stars aging. But honestly, there are a lot of moves, I think, for teams that don't particularly move the needle for them. They don't really move me, at least. So yeah, all right. So first, I want to talk on more of a positive note. One team that I think improved greatly this year are the Knicks. I was very high on the Knicks, especially last playoffs after their run. I think Brunson is a star in this league. I think the chemistry and the supporting cast around him, especially too. We have all the Villanova boys, Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, and Jalen Brunson. And now with the move they made to trade for Mikal Bridges, which was made for Bogdanovic, a solid contributor off the bench for the Knicks, which they will miss, and Shake Milton, both pretty good spark plug guys. Bojan, one of the best shooters in the league, I'd say, and 5 first-round picks. 4 of them which are unprotected, and 1 which is a protected first-round pick. So honestly, I like Mikal Bridges. I don't know if I'm giving up 5 first-round picks for him, but I do like the whole. It just gives them a lot of versatility, gives them a lot of depth at that wing position, because now you have OG Anunoby and both Mikal Bridges, 2, I'd say, probably of the top 10, top 5 perimeter defender at the wing position. So that's going to help them a lot, especially as they look to make it a deeper playoff push this year. But honestly, I do see the Knicks, for me at least, the Knicks are one of my finals contenders. I can see them easily making the conference finals and even the NBA finals. I think if Jalen Brunson can keep on sustaining his level of play, I think if all the guys around him too also buy in, like Josh Hart taking that, that center role, even though he's only, I want to say Josh Hart is about 6'4", 6'5" maybe, and he's probably the best rebounding guard we have in the league right now. I think that's just a tremendous squad right there. Super happy about that move for the Knicks. Yeah, if I were to say, the Knicks are probably one of my dark horse picks for the chip. So now, guys, Future Chris here. I wanted to quickly talk about the cat trade that went down not too long ago. And yeah, so let's talk about the trade itself. So the trade is Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle and other draft compensation heading to Minnesota in exchange for Cat. And this trade kind of came out of nowhere. There was no rumors or anything that either team was on the trade market or that any of the players were unsatisfied until the trade actually happened itself, where we have Dante DiVincenzo reportedly expressing some frustration with what have been his lesser role on the new look Knicks coming off the bench, especially after his career year. And then we also got another factor that could have led to the trade, which is Cat's unfriendly contract. Cat has the max extension, $220 million contract, and that doesn't give the Wolves a lot of leeway going forward, especially because Anthony Edwards is in line to receive another max contract, so that could have played a part of it, and we'll just have to see. But the Wolves are going to miss Cat dearly. He was very loved in Minnesota, was there for about almost a decade, drafted in 2015, the number 1 overall pick, and he's helped do a lot for the franchise as a whole, turned them into bottom dwellers of the Western Conference to being just 3 games away from the NBA Finals. So Cat was able to kind of go in as a rookie with just flashes of talent and go develop himself in the city of Minnesota and the organization and become a 4-time All-Star, take them to only their second ever Western Conference Finals. And I think the city of Minnesota is forever going to be grateful to Cat. So now for the new look teams. So I think the Wolves kind of went in and they mitigated, they minimized that instant loss they're going to feel by losing Cat by with the addition of Randall and DiVincenzo. I'm very high on DiVincenzo. I think he's one of those amazing 3-and-D spark plug offense kind of guys. And I think he can put him into any system in the NBA, and he's going to help your team win basketball games. And next for Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert is mostly a back to the basket, can only score within 5-10 feet of the basket and, kind of hurts the team spacing a bit. So I want to say, in compliments to Cat would help, stretch the floor when, Rudy Gobert kind of messes up the spacing. But now with another kind of post-interior scorer like Julius Randle, it's going to be probably much harder for the Wolves to figure out their spacing and get more open and clean looks from the 3, which is something that they do especially well with, got Anthony Edwards, an amazing 3-point shooter, Jaden McDaniels, a nice solid 3-and-D wing, and Mike McConley. So we're just going to have to wait and see how Randall and Gobert more specifically fit together and how the Wolves have to change their offense going forward to, account for that lack of 3-point shooting with the loss of Cat. And for the Knicks, I think the Knicks got even better, honestly. I didn't even think that was possible either, especially following this offseason. The Knicks were able to acquire Cat for what I feel is a relatively low asking price, and I think Cat's going to pair really well in New York. I think Cat's biggest weakness was interior defense. I think he's a solid perimeter defender, and I think it's that defensive end where he lacks. I feel like he is probably one of the most complete offensive players, but all his weaknesses on defense are going to be able to be masked by the other amazing defenders that New York has around him, like OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, who they just got not so long ago as well. And I think that Cat's ability to stretch the floor, shoot the 3, especially as a big man, is going to lead to a lot of interesting opportunities with Jalen Brunson specifically. I think the pick and pop game is going to be really tough, and I'm excited for the Knicks. I think I thought the Mikal Bridges pushed them over the hump, but now I'm even more convinced that this is going to be my pick. The Knicks are going to be my pick to come out the East this year. I think the Knicks are going to finally make that championship run, and I think Cat's going to be a large part of that. I think just by adding a big man that can shoot at the level that he does is unheard of, and I think it's going to only serve the Knicks going forward. So to contrast that, another move I wanted to talk about was Klay Thompson in the sign and trade to the Mavs. So look, I loved Klay Thompson. I'm a big Klay Thompson guy. I love the way he plays the game of basketball. But there's no sugarcoating it. He's washed. He's a shell of his former self. I think a lot of what gave him his upside in his prime was that ability to knock down a 3 and then go and guard that other team's best perimeter player. And that's just not something he could do anymore. And obviously that comes with aging, and I'm sure the Mavs don't expect him to do that anymore. But that is the main draw of Klay Thompson. You're getting the elite 3-and-D guy, the premier 3-and-D guy. And last year, Klay just did not look like that. His defense, obviously coming off I believe it was an Achilles injury and an ACL injury. He's not going to look the same. And I'm glad he was able to win that final ring with the Warriors, him, Steph, Dre. But I'm glad the Warriors moved on, Klay and the Warriors moved on, because there was no winning with that roster, personally, I'd say. But Klay just does not look solid anymore. I'm sure he can be a contributor in other ways, as maybe more of a spark plug, have him in the corner, leadership kind of guy off the court maybe. But look, he went 0 for 11 against the Kings in the play-in game. That's not something that's going to translate to winning basketball, especially for the Mavs. Look, the Mavs during their final run relied heavily on Luka and Kyrie to create their own offense and create offense for others. And Clay honestly does not do that. Clay's a guy that needs the offense kind of created for him. He's not going to take you off the dribble. He's not going to, meet you at the rim. He's going to use off-ball screens, cut through the lanes, and if you find him, it's an easy bucket. If you can't find him, he's kind of just a piece that takes away gravity from others. And that could also work in this math system, but it's just one of those things where we just need to see how he fits in with the team and all that good stuff. But honestly, I don't think this moves the Mavs any closer to the chip. I would have liked to see maybe a more shot creating trade for the Mavs, maybe like a DeMar DeRozan, and more on that actually in a little bit. Another trade I wanted to speak about was the DeMar DeRozan trade to the Kings. Look, I'm not DeMar's biggest fan, his whole mid-range game, but there's one thing's for sure. He does get buckets, averaging a solid, I want to say 24, 26 on the Bulls. And there's a reason for that. He was the primary number one option, getting most of the shots, and all of his shots are coming from that mid-range, from that, from the interior paint. He's a very old-fashioned scorer, I'd say, but he does get buckets, and I think that's going to serve well for the Kings. I think this does move the Kings into, they were fighting for a play-in spot last year. I think this does move them into that guaranteed playoff spot. I feel more confident in that. You're relieving some of the pressure off of Fox, who honestly is a player I'm very high on. I think Fox is the franchise guy for the Kings. I think he's going to lead the Kings to some pretty cool things in the upcoming years. And Sabonis. Sabonis is probably the best, besides Nikola Jokic and maybe Joel Embiid. I believe he's the best all-around center in the league right now. You've got a guy that can rebound the ball, averaging about almost 12, 13 rebounds a game. And you've also got a guy who can pass the ball at an elite level with other guards. Sabonis had the most triple-doubles this year, and there's a reason for that. Look, the guy has eyes on the back of his head. He's a guy where you want him having the ball. I'm a big advocate for positionless basketball, and Sabonis fits that perfectly. And you see clips of interviews of Sabonis talking about how he likes taking the ball up and how De'Aaron Fox doesn't mind him taking the ball up. I think that fluidity with the Kings gives them a new depth of danger right there. I think that serves the Kings well going forward. I think with the plus DeMar, I think if the trio, despite their very differing games, I think if they get together, if they click, I think that's a guaranteed playoff spot right there. And probably the biggest draw of free agency was Paul George, PG-13, now PG-8, of course, but going to the Sixers. So I love Paul George personally. That might be a little biased because of the whole late 2010s, me growing up on that basketball. But Paul George, smooth as can be, everyone knows it. There's nothing he does at a below average level. He is good at literally everything in basketball. He is a solid defender, solid passer, amazing scorer. He's good at about everything you want in an elite level of basketball player. And, he has the frame, he has the skill set, but the one thing he does not have, I'd say, is the more something that he can't control. It's that injuries. The injuries have plagued Paul George throughout his career. In every stop, you got his 2018 performance in OKC against the young Utah Jazz, where it was a rookie Donovan Mitchell, where his shoulder just was not holding up. You could see him wince in pain every time he was lifting up his shoulder to shoot. It's with Paul George, it's just the thing of injuries and also that playoff performance. Look, Paul George, when he was brought into the Clippers, him and Kawhi, everyone thought they're contending for championships year in and year out. And for 1 year, they were able to do that in 2021, where they made the Western Conference Finals. But that was without both Paul George after the second round and Kawhi nearly the whole playoff round. It's just because they both struggle with injury history, and putting two stars together like that oftentimes does not work out well. And now they're I think the Sixers are kind of repeating that with both Joel Embiid and Paul George, both of who have extensive injury history, with Embiid missing a significant portion of last season after a meniscus injury. And it's just one of those things where this pairing can kind of come out any way possible. If you get a good, solid, smooth PG feeling himself, blocking out the outside nose, which is something else he does struggle with, is that criticism. Because as Paul George even says it himself, he's not really fit to be that main guy on a championship roster. And that's something that, maybe the Sixers looked at and thought they could yeah. But look, I think I'm actually very interested to see more of Tyrese Maxey's development going forward. So I want to see how his shot attempts are affected, how his game, his mindset, his aggressiveness on the court is affected by Paul George signing. Because when it was just Embiid and Maxey, you had Maxey being that clear-cut second guy, and in some instances even being the first guy when Embiid was missing significant time. And there was also that game against the Knicks during this year's first-round playoffs where you had Maxey just going off, shooting from the logo, 44 points in a game performance. It's just that's something I want to see. I want to see how Paul George fares alongside that. But I do believe it obviously increases that star-studdedness. I think that's probably one of the most, I think Embiid, Maxey, George, probably the most talented big three in the NBA right now, just going off pure talent. But yeah, I think if Paul George and Embiid stay healthy, and if they're able to kind of combat some of those playoff fall-offs that they're kind of known for, I think that's a dangerous squad in the East. I think they have a good shot at running with both the Celtics, the Knicks, and the Bucks, of course. I think they're right up there with them, and it's just a question to see if Paul George and Embiid can perform. Now I kind of want to switch over to some NBA award predictions and what I value for the award, what my thinking is of the award, like the criteria that is used for it. So we have MVP. Look, MVP, everyone knows, most valuable player. But honestly, that's not how the award is given out most of the time. If you think about valuable player, it's just if you take that one person off the squad, how bad will they be? How bad will their fall off be? Who is more necessary to their teams? And if that's the case, let's be honest, every year, and I don't want to sound biased, it's going to be LeBron James, or it's going to be a Steph Curry. It's going to be one of those guys. It's going to be a lot of repeats. That's not exactly true all the time, but look, MVP doesn't exactly mean MVP. In my opinion, MVP is, for any given season, it's going to be the best player on one of the best teams in the league, the team that has the most expectations, and it's just going to be their best player. That's how the award's been given out the last couple of years. That's how you have Jokic winning the last couple of years. That's how you have Embiid winning it. It's all just the best player on the best team, realistically, with the most eye-grabbing stats. As long as their stats correlate to wins, doesn't matter how, doesn't matter whatever. As long as they're above, I'd say like a top 4, top 3 seed in their conference, they're going to be MVP most likely. I don't think that's how the award should be voted on, but it's just simply how it is. And yeah, so for this year, I think my MVP prediction is at least Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Look, I think he's a young guy averaging the last, I want to say 2 years, averaging a solid 36 and 6. It's ridiculous. Like, he's, at least offensively, no holes in his game. He's probably one of the smoothest players. And a guy I trust taking that last shot every game. I think the Thunder were the 1 seed in the West last year. I think the fact that he was an MVP candidate, he should have won it last year, in my opinion. I think he should have won it over Joker. I think he was more integral to that Thunder. I think if you take him off the Thunder, they don't do anything they're doing this year. But yeah, so yeah, I think Shai is in line. He's a young guy. I think we're going to see him win a lot more of these types of awards. I think he deserves it. If he continues the production he had last year, I think he's just a solid guy, and I count on him winning the MVP this year. So yes, we got the Defensive Player of the Year, and unlike MVP, it's pretty straightforward, just the best defensive player. But there are different types of the defensive players that we see. Obviously, we have our big men, the more defensive anchors, where they're holding down the paint, they're blocking the shots, or we have like those hybrid, wing guys where they're guarding on given nights the best perimeter player or the best interior player. They're switching on everything. They're kind of, I'd say, a mixture of both. They're bridging that gap between the defensive anchormen and the perimeter guys. And, obviously now we have the perimeter guys. The perimeter guys are going to lock up your team's best guard. They're going to, chase around the off-ball screens. They're going to run around on that perimeter, make life hard for the guards, make life, hard for the team in general. And obviously that's a simplified way of saying it, but that's just the way I interpret it. And for my Defensive Player of the Year, I'm predicting an Anthony Davis Defensive Player of the Year award. So AD is probably the best defender in the NBA, I'd say, for the past even like nearly 10 years. Like if you see, even since he was in college, like Kentucky, Anthony Davis on Kentucky had more blocks than most in Michigan State, than all the other schools in his conference. And it's only translated even better to the NBA. He is a premier shot blocker, and the thing is, he can guard perimeter guys if he needs to. Like, he might not be as switchable as Bam Adebayo, but if you think about it on the paint side, no one wants to meet AD at the paint. We saw it at the Olympics. We saw him, holding down the paint while, also switching on the screens, being able to play on the perimeter. I think he's the best defensive player. I think he has the most defensive impact in the league right now. I think he should be winning. He should be a defensive player of the year candidate year in, year out. The fact that Rudy Gobert has robbed him so many times infuriates me. But yeah, I just think AD should be AD should be the guy. So coach of the year, it's very hard to pinpoint coach of the year. It could be given out for multitudes of reasons. It's got, like the most winningest coach. Like I think we had Mike Budenholzer win it a couple years back for being a 67-win team. We had Mike Brown win it a couple years ago for taking the Kings to the playoffs for the first time in decades almost. And I think I like the more of that underdog. I like the coach that's exceeding expectations with the roster he's given isn't the best, and he's just taking that team to unpredicted levels, and I generally enjoy that. So for me, I'm gonna predict a Ime Udoka win, and I know all the controversy surrounding Ime and his stint in Boston, but I think he's been able to find a new footing in Houston. I think Houston is a young team that's can contend for a playoff spot. I think their young guys are just very Sengun, beast, baller. I think he's up there. He has that same skill set as Nikola Jokic, just a very light version of him. I think Jalen Green, monster. Fred VanVleet, not the youngest guy, but he's still solid. That's the guard that team needs. I think overall, that squad in general, Cam Whittemore, dog. Jabari Smith, dog. Like, I think this team is in position to make a run for the playoffs. I think Ime Udoka is gonna be a big part of that. He has that, that championship. He already has that championship experience. I think he's gonna only exceed with the Rockets, and I think they're gonna be a fun team to watch. I think he's gonna be a big part of that. I think he's gonna helm the offense like he did last year, and even like last year, they went on that crazy, I want to say 9-10 game win streak, and almost cracked the playoffs. I think Ime Udoka is gonna figure it out earlier, and boom, just take them to new heights.